We are so fortunate to have Elizabeth Harding Weinstein today as our guest. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate that. She's a mother of three. Her kids are 18, 16, and 14. She is very intelligent, a graduate of Columbia University, and lives in New York State. But unfortunately, she's also a survivor of domestic violence and abuse. Her husband, Brian Stryker Weinstein, is a well-known lawyer and senior litigation partner of his firm. He graduated from Yale Law School and sits as a board member on Duke University's Keenan Institute for Ethics. There is an amazing timeline, and Lizzie's going to break that down for us, but it is also on her social media page, and we will link that in our description. But then also she was on our friend Emma's Survivor Series podcast, and so we'll link that as well. She gives a great description of her timeline and everything. But today we're going to focus a little bit more on the parts of the story that as parents concern us a little bit more. And to me, stand out a little bit, the idea of if this could happen to us and what we need to be aware of, just so that, because yeah, it could happen to us. But really, before we get started, I know you have your kind of high overview, 30,000-foot view of what you've gone through over this past year and the years before. Can you take the time and explain to our listeners and viewers what you have heroically gone through this last year?
Sure, and thank you so much for having me on and telling the story. I always say the most horrific part about my unique story is that it's not unique. When things first started happening to me, I was thinking like, oh my God, when this gets out, everybody's going to freak out about how ridiculous this is. And so I started talking about my story. And what was happening is I was getting so many phone calls from parents saying, oh yeah, that happened to me too. And I was like, what do you mean?
Wait a minute.
Let's get into it. So yes, I'm a woman in her late 40s. My children are much older. I'm very, very close to all my children, and all three of us individually took trips together right about a month before this happened, a month and a half before this happened. And in May 2020, due to the kind of having COVID family time, stuff started to come to the surface. And I very quickly realized that my Yale Law School husband, who had a lifelong history of pedophilia and was himself a victim of it, was a pedophile. In very short order, we confronted my husband, and we said that there was nothing we could do to change what's happened so far, and we were willing to help him, but that he just couldn't hurt us anymore. And he had been known to be a narcissistic abuser and a gaslighter, and I had sought treatment through a domestic violence counselor at the DA's office in Westchester County for about 7 years. And so originally he kind of seemed like, he acknowledged his pedophilia. He said that he wanted it to stop. And, he very clearly said that he didn't want to hurt the children anymore. And that really resonated with me. And I believe that. However, the very next day, he left the house, started trying to have me taken against my will. He tried to have me falsely committed to a psych institute while acknowledging that that it would be illegal for him to do so, that I wasn't a threat to myself or others. He then tried to hire somebody, he got hired a company who would falsify medical documents and tried to have me falsely kidnapped and taken against my will. And I have the contracts, I have the documents, he accidentally put the fee for those services on my credit card. I had his iPad at home, and I thought had a very open, honest, exchange. So I had all his passwords, I saw everything. So when that didn't work, my husband then went to the court systems, and using only just one piece of paper with not even in his own handwriting, then had me, while he was missing, and under a pedophilia investigation, got a court order issued to have me evicted from my home, taken from my children, and removed from my life. That was June 5th of 2020. And, you know, everybody kind of just, I was trying to find the exact page. Everybody was kind of like, don't worry, this will all be better on Monday. And it's been 11 months. I've had no direct access to my children. I've not been even allowed home to get my belongings. So the clothes that I'm wearing, I either, like the shirt I happen to take with me, but everything else has been given to me by friends. I've been rendered homeless. The courts didn't even give me financial support. They wouldn't give me housing. And we make $5 million a year. We're multimillionaires. And all of a sudden, nothing. Like I had $6 to my name. He was supposed to give a support check. He wouldn't give the check. And I'm literally sleeping in my car. It was like crazy stuff like that going on in my life. And what was amazing to me is the incredible number of the judiciary that helped him. And, you know, we have this preconceived notion in our heads, especially as parents, like if anything bad happens to your children, that judge is just going to help you. Yeah, and instead, the system is actually a child trafficking system. It's insane, and it's been going on for decades. But just like to finish with my high-level summary, so I then started advocating heavily against the judicial corruption, against the pedophilia, and also these COVID restrictions, which were further impacting my rights to due process. I wasn't able to get a trial. I wasn't able to have visits with my children. Like it was awful. So I then, on January 4th, I went in to go file documents with one of the court clerks in my local town. And I was getting these judicial orders that had been issued against me, but then not being able to have a trial. So I'd get an order saying that I had to stay away from my children. And then they wouldn't give me a trial on any of the causes that brought the order. And even the piece of paper that he filled out for the order didn't even meet any of the legal requirements. It didn't meet, you know, it showed no bodily harm. It said that I wrote him too many emails. Like nothing made sense. But the problem was it was a judicial order, and then the cops would enforce the judicial order. So if the cops saw me, they would arrest me, right? If they thought that I was in violation. So I had to stay within the confines of these ridiculous orders that I was never given a trial on, never found guilty, and didn't meet the requirements for the stay away that they gave me. Nonetheless, January 4th, I then go into the court, into my village hall to file papers. The clerk calls down to the police who are in the same building, and they're like, how did she get in the building? We don't want her here. Can you come up and take care of her? And I have a copy of that, the phone conference with the clerk calling the police. The police came up, and I'll let you guys watch the video. The video speaks for itself. Within 90 to 120 seconds, 2 6'4" officers had me pinned up against the wall, arrested me, and then I was put into solitary confinement for not wearing a mask, for disorderly conduct. And I was not given an arraignment. I was not given a trial. I was not given a lawyer. I was put into solitary confinement at Westchester County Medical Center, strip search, humiliated, the whole thing. I eventually had an arraignment the following day, and the judge remanded me to be there for 7 weeks. 7 weeks, it's insane. And as part of my husband's narcissistic abuse, he has a sick and sadistic thing that he does where he tries to get me and the children to unnecessarily have psychiatric care. So it gives him a cover for his pedophilia, and it discredits us. So this has been what he's been asking the courts to do. He's been writing to the court saying, make her say she's crazy and I'll give her her kids back. Make her, go into an inpatient psychiatric facility and we'll let her see the children again and get back to the house. It's disgusting. It's disgusting, okay? So then this judge then says, oh, I put you in there because I don't know if you're competent enough to represent yourself. So I need to do what's called a 730 exam. Now, a 730 exam is a very low ball, like, are you competent enough to stand trial? Which means, do you know who the people are in the courtroom? Do you know are you oriented to person, place, and time? Do you know the charges that you're being charged with and what time that those might or serve should you be found guilty of those charges? It's like the standard of which is so low. Right. And also they're releasing criminals from prison because of COVID. And now you're
yes.
It was obscene. So anyways, I got out of there, which that's a whole nother story we can dive into. And I filed a federal lawsuit against the village and the judge and my husband and the police who arrested me. And then the next day I got an email from the town, and this is in Briarcliff Village. And they said, oh my gosh, will you please come to the town at this time to pick up your records? And I thought, gosh darn it, Lizzie, good at ya. Like, you were brave and you filed the federal lawsuit, and now they're going to act lawfully. Like, yay.
Yep.
They knew enough to record what was happening because it had been so egregious. At that point, they had falsely arrested me, I think 5 times. And each time they would arrest me, they'd pull me into the station, they'd keep me there for 5-6 hours, and then they'd release me because they knew that they really didn't have any charges on me, or they'd give me a new order of protection, and again, never access to actually be heard on. Right? So it was just all coercion, all punishment, all abusive process and malicious prosecution. So now they asked me to come to the village hall. I show up, the door's locked. The cop eventually comes, Detective Galbraith, who has stonewalled my husband's pedophilia investigation, destroyed evidence, returned evidence, refused to take witness testimonies. It's been horrific. He then unlocks the door for me. And then as I'm walking up the stairs to go to the clerk's office, they jump me from behind and kidnap me. And I'm laughing because it sounds ridiculous. But again, I don't want you to believe a word I'm saying. Like, just look at the videos. And so they kidnapped me. They then dragged me in front of the judge again without a lawyer, against my over my objections, and without allowing a witness or anybody to come in. And at this point, a friend had like shown up at the police station because people now know.
Right.
Oh,
They're checking in on you.
She's in town.
Make sure you're okay, not in jail.
So she came down and she's filming in between like a crack of the door because they wouldn't let her in as a witness. And I'm saying, like, they won't let you in to get my belongings. They won't let you be a witness. They're trying to say that I'm incompetent. Like, this is ridiculous. I'm of sound-minded body. And you know, these are all the defendants in my federal case. Like, this is ridiculous. Anyways, they pull me in front of the judge. The judge says, I'm declaring you incompetent. I said, well, this makes no sense. And I really don't care what you think. And just because you don't want me to represent myself because I'm an articulate pro se litigant, Your Honor, does not mean that you can kidnap me and just pull me into your courtroom whenever you want to make such declarations as false as they are. And he said, well, I'm releasing all charges against you, which again, I was never given a trial. They're all malicious charges. I said, I'm hiding all my evidence of malicious prosecution. I'm going to release all the charges, but you're going to jail. And I was like, Judge Code, Howard T. Code. I'm like, why would I be going to jail if I have no criminal charges? And by the way, that makes no sense. People claim incompetency to get out of going to jail. So what are you doing? You look like a fool. Like, your abuse of your position is crazy. And this guy is a fireman, like 4 days a week. He works at the fire department. And then one day he comes in and handles the traffic tickets. This man has kidnapped my children, kept me away from my home, kept me away from my belongings, dissipated. I mean, it's insane what this judicial corruption has been able to get across. Okay. So anyways, I then get taken. My friend records, the cops try and sneak me out the back. They say, go to the front and we'll let you talk to her when she's leaving the front. And then they instead sneak me out back. And so she hears them radioing to the car. So she comes running around and you can see she's like recording.
That's a friend to have right there. That's a good friend right there.
Yes. So she's like recording, and I'm in handcuffs and I'm being taken by the police, and I'm saying, I'm of sound mind and body. I'm fully competent. I'm of no threat to myself or others. They're trying to declare me incompetent, and now they're taking me to jail, which makes no sense. And she even asked the officers, are you really taking her to jail? And they're like, yep. I get put back in jail, strip searched again, shaken up by the police. They throw me in a holding cell where I'm allowed to make outgoing collect calls. I finally get in touch with her. She says, thank God, where are you? I've got a lawyer, he's coming down, and all calls are recorded. So I was like, oh, good, I'm here. And within 90 seconds of her saying that, 4 officers come busting back in my cell, get up, we're transferring you. Where are you transferring? They're like, we don't have to tell you. I'm like, no, actually, you kind of do.
Yeah.
So they say, we're taking you to St. Vincent's Medical Center. Now, St. Vincent's Medical Center is one of the hospitals when my husband had hired people to take me against my will back in May of 2020. It's one of the places that were on his list of places to take me. Right? There were like 4 places, but the funny part about it is that and I have that here, on that list that he says back in May, he's like, don't take her there. Like, it was so bad. The place where he was offering to take me, right? This was back in May when he had signed a contract with people to take me away.
Yeah.
So he says, okay, yes, Silver Hill in Connecticut, Cornell Presbyterian in White Plains, not Four Winds in Harrison. So now, fast forward to March of 2021. Now he's like, okay, take her to that place, which is like the worst place that's in this.
Just
in
take her away is what he needs right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's disgusting. And it was literally like Nurse Ratched. They would come up with needles. They're like, we're going to get you. You're never going to leave here. They used to, I would be asleep at night and they would come in and I sleep like I'm out like a light. It's so funny because like he's accusing me of being bipolar. And I'm like, dude, I sleep 8 hours a night and I'm never depressed. I'm always the same person. I'm always loud. I'm late. I'm always cursing. I've always got a story. Right?
Right. Every video I've seen of you, you're exactly the same. So
Exactly the same. Exactly.
I agree.
And it's been this way for the entire 22 years he's known me. So anyway, I get put into that hospital. Now I'm a Columbia University trained nurse, and I did my ER and psych training down at Bellevue. So I know what I'm dealing with. So I showed up and and they shackled me. I was like wrapped up. It had chains wrapped around my waist to my ankles up to my, the whole thing. So I walk in and I say, absolutely not. I am of sound mind and body. I'm fully competent. I'm being taken against my will in retaliation for filing a federal lawsuit against these officers. I want the medical director, I want the direct patient care director, and I want my lawyer here right now. And this guy, Dr. Phoebe, was there, and Dr. Weinstein, and Mr. Mohammed Tayyib, and Dean Harlan, who is the medical director. I believe he was there as well. And Mr. Phoebe came up to me and he's like, no, here's what's going down. You're coming in here and you're going to prove to us that you're well. And if you're well, you should have no reason, right? And this is the messed up thing that's happening in our world now, the switching of the burden of proof. You're going to be sick until you prove yourself well. Mm-hmm. You're going to be incompetent until you prove yourself competent, right? Yeah. And when you're a good person who doesn't deal in these nefarious worlds, you're thinking, well, I've got nothing, to lose. But at this point, I had been dealing with a lot of nefarious people. Yes. So I knew better. And I was like, no, that's not the way it works. And I don't have to go in here. And I'm not going in here. And they were like, well, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go back to jail and you're going to sit in a cell, locked alone by yourself for 5 days. And then after the 5 days, we're going to transfer you to a state-run mental facility. And I was like, why am I going to jail?
Just tell me why.
Yeah.
Like morons. And to this day, I wonder what would have happened if I just pushed it, because maybe if I got into jail, then the lawyer would have gotten to me sooner. I don't know. But anyways, long story short, they end up forcing me to be admitted up there. I immediately file a motion with the hospital, and under New York state laws, once you file a motion to say I'm being kept against my will, they have 5 days to take you to court. So there's a mental health hygiene legal services that you have to use for this, but they are employed by the courts. So they're employed by the very same system that's trying to keep me against my will. So I was in there from March 9th. I filed my federal lawsuit on March 8th. I got kidnapped and put in there on March 9th. I was kept there until April 2nd. And 2 weeks in, when they finally did grant me the hearing that they were supposed to give to me, 5 days in, they got a different judicial order. This Judge Ann E. Minahan, who was the same judge that handled my first false imprisonment case by Judge Code and helped him there. She then came in and ordered me medications over objections. So I'm a 49-year-old woman. I've never been on any medications my whole life. I'm very aware. I have insight into my care, into my services. I was forced lithium, Zyprexa, Depakote, Ativan, Haldol injections, Benadryl. And if a normal dosage for somebody, like say, if I'm 110, 115 pounds, that dosage would be like 150 milligrams. They had 1,500 milligrams. It was.
And that's not stuff you can just start and stop when you.
No.
Correct. You're not supposed to, but I kind of did.
I would have too.
Well, she ramped me up
Real quick.
in an unsafe way.
That's so much. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It was pretty disgusting. And what was pathetic about it, and where this story will really, the reason I want people to understand my story is because this is all related to COVID. What's happening right now is that there is a degradation of our constitutional rights and a degradation of our parental rights that have been going on for decades in this country, where the government has been allowed to take your children away with almost no plausible deniability, okay? And when you protect your children, they then punish you for protecting. It's the system that supports abusers and pedophiles, and it's unfortunately just out and out child trafficking. And it's child trafficking to parental kidnappers, and it's child trafficking, taking children away from parents and just putting them right into foster homes. It's been horrific what I've been able to learn, and all the phone calls that I've been getting from people, again, saying, oh yeah, my kids get trafficked by the court too. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But
it truly is mind blowing, because that's another piece that I learned is how deep the trafficking was and currently is, especially when it comes to CPS and the foster care. And most people would never think to look there because they just think, oh, it's the government. They're here to help these kids. It's the system. They're here to help. And it's like, no, they're using our tax-paying money, and we are a part of helping traffic these children.
Correct. That's exactly it. We're paying for them to traffic children. We are paying for them to traffic children. And one of the reasons I was like, why is it so hard for me to break out of this mindset that I'm going to get justice in the court? And somebody finally nailed it. She was like, everything that you know about judges, you only know from Hollywood.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, or from your high school book that teaches you the government's good and they're there to help you. You've never been in front of a judge. So you have no firsthand verifiable experience. All you know is what you see in the movies, and they sell it hard in the movies. Well, they sell it hard.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Like, even as you're talking, I'm like, where is the Miranda rights or whatever they always read off in the movies about you will be given a lawyer if you cannot afford a lawyer and all of that sort of stuff. And you're here like, I don't have a lawyer. What do you mean I don't have a lawyer? The whole thing is like, you are innocent until proven guilty, and everything is opposite. And I fully agree with you with the COVID idea that you're not really healthy, you're asymptomatic. You're not really safe, you need to wear a mask. You're not really this, that. It's all that gaslighting that's happening. That, okay, is that really how it's going, or are we supposed to believe something else? And folks like us that are like, wake up, what are you doing?
Right.
And they're like, oh yeah, it's okay, I'll just put my mask on. Like, think about.
Well, the one tenet of logical fallacy that I can speak to is this flipping of the burden of proof. The burden of proof is on the accuser. They've switched it to the burden of proof is on the person who's being accused. Okay, so I'm going to make an accusation, and it's on you to disprove my theory. That is a logical fallacy. But a true logic is that you, the accuser, have to have clear and convincing evidence in order to indict somebody of that. And me as a person, I am innocent until proven guilty. But instead, we have these orders of protection, which are used all the time in family court to punish the protected parent, and with very, very little evidence whatsoever. I want to find this form that my husband filled out just so that you can see how horrific it is, how easy it is. Okay, So
Yeah,
here it is.
while you're looking, yeah, we had lunch a couple weeks ago with a lady who's talking about, like, in the medical community, that that parents who didn't want to go through with whatever the doctor said, and they're like, no, I'd like to do something more holistically, or I'd like to try something different, that they would come in and now their kids being taken from them for them trying to be the most loving parents ever.
No, that's exactly what I'm talking about. This is what people need to understand, and where I think your viewers can most benefit.
Yeah.
We need to sound the alarm. They have been for decades desecrating our rights, our constitutional rights and our parental rights, to get us used to having systems whereby they can take our children for certain things. But now with COVID, it's at a fever pitch. There is a kidnapping fever pitch. Okay, they are trying to look for any reason to take custody of your children away from you. They are trying to get any plausible deniability why your child does not need your consent or knowledge of medical procedures for as young as 11.
Yeah.
Right? There are bills in DC. I think it's 11 years old.
Yep.
This is, and we have to wake up, and it's all a grooming. They're like, okay, listen, if we say 16, are they going to fight back? Okay, what if we say 14 in this state? Does anybody care? Are they really standing up? I mean, I know they're mad, but are they really fighting back?
Really
right?
mad.
And that's the issue. They're not. So I want to show you something. This is my husband's. It's called the family offense petition. Okay. It is 4 pages of something like this, where he checks off a box, and this is the most that he filled out. On the other pages, he's left blank. And then he writes this. Okay. Now, this is, again, he's a Yale Law School graduate, UKB scholar, and he's on the ethics board. Okay. And he is asking for the mother of his children to be taken away from the children while he is missing and undergoing a pedophilia investigation, and cut off all care for us. And he acknowledges his pedophilia. I mean, it's like, it's so sick. And this is what it says. And I want to just get this home to people, that this is all somebody has to do. They go into family court. There's no evidence. There's nothing else with this. It's not like he even submitted emails or videos or nothing, just these words. It says, with intent, telephones, emails, and texts incessantly at various times, causing me to be anxious, nervous, distracted, and fearful. This is a 48-year-old man, by the way, okay? Which shows that he's having psychological disturbances.
Right.
He's acknowledging he's anxious,
Back and forth. Yeah.
And sleepless is the one that should jump out at the judge. She should look at this and say, this is not a well man, and throw this out instantly. Not only does she not do it, she gives him full custody of our children while he's under a pedophilia investigation. And the police lie to me. The lawyer that's in the courtroom, a friend of ours who like showed up, and she's like, I'm here to help both parties. And she was actually helping my husband, but I didn't know that, lies to me. And I didn't know my children's rights. I didn't know. So when the cops came to me and the kid said, we don't want to go with him. He's left the house weeks ago after we talked about his pedophilia. We talked about it as a family. He left the house weeks ago. He's not acting right. We want to be with our mom. She's fine. We're safe. We've been here for 2 weeks. And by the way, DSS had been to the house for 2 weeks. And not that they need to deem me safe, because again, your safety is assumed. You have to prove that I've harmed. Okay. But they affirmed it, meaning like, yes, there was nothing wrong with the kid. They were thriving and safe in her sole care for weeks. Okay. And instead, he just writes this, and it's got contradictory information. It's got, like, in this, he has the different address that he puts in this one, and there's simultaneously submitted petitions to the court. I get a police report that shows that he's using police to harass me and lie to me. And it specifically says, like, this is his lawyer, Mr. Stephen Jones, who's Brian Weinstein's attorney. Stephen wished that we did not tell Elizabeth that Brian was just at his office, or that he was Brian's attorney. And then they did it. And then the police and then they're stupid enough to put on their police report that we're lying for him. Okay. And I bring all of this to the court instantly, although this police report took me 7 weeks to get. okay, because of COVID.
You're right.
So he goes into the court, and in a less than 20-minute court session, my whole life is taken from me. It has been a year, and I'm talking 12 to 18-hour days, and I still don't have my babies. So sorry.
Nope.
No, you're
No, don't ever apologize, especially to parents, because I couldn't even imagine not having mine. And
well, when you know that they're locked in with a pedophile who's manipulating them and who's subjecting them to the same gaslighting and psychological manipulation and control that I had to break out of. And I know how hard it was for me. And then he's every single person that he brings these people around is disgusting. Like his lawyer was like, I mean, I can't even get into it. Like his lawyer tried to do this to his own wife. And he's like a skeevy Boy Scout leader in our town, Stephen Jones in Briarcliff, right? I know. There's like a million things. He tried to get his own wife declared incompetent. He then got into a fist fight. The guy's a lawyer, got into a fist fight in the courtroom in his own divorce, got sanctioned for it, and he ended up getting slammed. This is the man that my Davis Polk partner hires to represent him. Do you understand? Then he starts bringing them around these really skeevy, gross handlers. That's what I call them. And then he's like, oh, they're the supervisors. No, they're paid for by the pedophile. They control the entire discussion. They intimidate my children. If I say things to them like, are you safe? They say, you can't say that. And then end the visit or end the phone call. I mean,
they all work together. And people don't realize like how close it's happening in their own backyard.
Right.
And we talked to another survivor who actually was molested through the Mormon church and Boy Scouts as well. So just hearing, I could not imagine not having my kids. I know for me, I have full custody of my daughter. And that was always one of my biggest fears, is when going through that battle of custody, is if I had to share the time. And it's one thing if it was for the child's best interest, and that father was playing that fatherly figure role. But for me, it was just like, you can't come and go. You can't play with the kids' emotions. They're so innocent. So I could not imagine what you're going through. And I think as a mother, especially, and just overall being a survivor, that's one thing that's truly empowering and inspiring with your story, is you, no matter what, still carry a smile on your face, and you stay so positive, and you are so transparent in the whole process.
Right.
So Lizzie's showing all these documents, please go to her Instagram. She has everything laid out and she breaks it down. And one thing that I've learned from you is, and I know we want to get deeper into it, is the whole judicial system and what you now know. And had you known it back then, you definitely could have been able to protect your kiddos a lot more. But I think another thing too is we're taught, and we're even groomed at such a young age to, oh, you call this person and you're there to trust the cops, you're there to trust the system.
Right.
And so I think that's one thing that you've done a great job with, is breaking down the judicial system and educating parents so this doesn't happen to them or their child.
Yeah. And people will say like, oh, you're ruining their reputation. I'm like, no, I'm making it more accurate. Like, these people prey, they're maggots, they're parasites, and they prey on your niceties and they prey on your trust.
Yep.
They count on you trusting them, and they manipulate and they lie and they groom and they take your children. Okay. And so all of these things that are going on in our world right now, I think the most important thing I can get across to anybody is to really start tuning into your intuition. And when things don't feel right, but then you've got this like weird thing that says, oh no, just trust them, they must know, or they're the expert, or that, no. That's a huge hell no on that.
Yep.
Like, we really need to get back to our intuition, get back into our knowing, and understand that the truth of the situation will resonate with you. And when things don't feel right, you just stand up for your kids, no matter what. And, you know, one of the things that we talked about in a pre-call with us was, we were talking about this notion, and this goes back to now like 2013. My children were first on a pedophile phishing website. And this is when my husband first, like, his gaslighting went bonkers. And I didn't understand it at the time. I thought it was because he had Stockholm syndrome. He himself was molested. He didn't want to talk about pedophilia. And the fact that he had this like loud, tireless advocate of a wife who was like gonna take down the website and gonna, like, you know, make sure that the school let the other parents know so that the other kids were protected. Like, I thought he was just like freaking out because he didn't want to confront his own thing. The truth of the matter was that my husband himself was on those websites. And so he was like freaking out.
Take them down. Yeah.
Well, no, also like, she's going to find out that I'm on it.
I'm on it.
Yeah.
So anyways, he started heavily gaslighting me then to say, you're not right. Something, you've got bipolar, you've got issue. And I'm like, oh, freaking bipolar. I'm the same person every day. Like, what's wrong with you? Why are you advocating for your children? What type of father would let their children get sexually solicited on these websites that break all these federal regulations and laws? And you're a lawyer.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're a Yale Law School lawyer. Like, take these guys down. And instead he's like, something's wrong with you, and you're bringing pain to our family, and you're the issue. And I was like, but anyway, so what happened in 2013 is my daughter had asked me if she could go on this website. And I looked at it for about 5 seconds and I was like, absolutely not. This is a horrific website. Okay. Now at the time I had a 4th grader, a 3rd grader, and a 5-year-old. I wasn't a kindergartner. So I wasn't as seasoned into the parenting thing as I am now.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah.
But you know, you're still in like, you're making your friends in the neighborhood, you're making your friends in the new school, your youngest just went into kindergarten, so you're getting settled. He's getting settled, you're getting settled, like the whole thing was happening. And so she asked me if she'd go on the site, and I say, absolutely not. And then she's like, Mommy, Miss Marie Jones lets us on it. And I was like, oh my God, well, the computer teacher at school is letting them on it. And so, of course, they're going to vet these sites. And of course, and oh my God, Lizzie, see, you're one of those helicopter parents. And you're going to make your kids be that dorky one that's not friends with anybody because you keep them isolated from all normal activities. So against my better judgment, I then let her on the site. And then, you know, my kindergartner too, can I go on it? And I was like, well, I mean, it's your school too, I guess, if they're letting you on it. And then one day I went down into the office and there were some open chat rooms, which normally the chat rooms don't stay open in these things, which they're supposed to on any child's website. They're supposed to all be recordable, and you should be able to get access to any activity that your child's gone through on any of these sites. But here, and again, this website's called Movie Star Planet. And it's still up and running.
I was just going to say, I looked it up before that we got on, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm looking this up, and sure enough, it is still there.
It's still up and running, and
Still looks inappropriate.
It's, well, now it's gotten even more egregiously inappropriate. Before, it would have on the opening site, it would have like girls in like Cinderella dresses, like high necks and down to your thing. But then as you started playing on the site, and the site could recognize you as a childlike player, you would then get secret access to back rooms. And then these back rooms, they would want you to give personal information. And the more information you got, the more movie star points you got, and the more popular you became. And now the points meant nothing in the real world, but into this game, you got new outfits. And all of a sudden that Cinderella dress turned into a meshed topless look with like nips coming through, short skirts, and heels like this. I mean, it was disgusting. So this is the site that my husband was protecting. This was a site that my husband was telling me something was wrong with me. But when I first found out that my kids had put their private information on there, including their names and their addresses and their phone numbers, and literally it would say, you can't put your phone number. So then she would spell it N-I-N-E. Do you know what I mean? And I'm thinking, if an 8-year-old can figure out how to get around it, then it's not really a tight security system, right?
Mhm.
So anyways, when I first saw it, I was like, just all of my anxiety and all of my fears. And we were in the middle of dealing with a similar situation with my niece, where she was in her early teens and was getting a text relationship from a man in his 40s for 10 months. And so we had just figured that out about a month earlier. I had discovered that when I was on taking her out one night, and she had given me her phone. So we were in the middle of confronting that man, and that man's name is Tank Kavanaugh, and he lives in our town. He was a golf pro at Hudson National. So he was texting my niece for 10 months, for 8 months, from October till May, when I found out that they were having this relationship. And that's what made me, to be honest with you, start paying more attention, because we had hired a private investigator to help with that. And the private investigator started telling me all these stories, and he started telling me about how, like, he had just rescued this one girl who had been cyber stalked because she met somebody on a website one day. And so literally that's why I went downstairs. So imagine you're like freaking out about your niece, but you're, keeping it all together, and you're pursuing an investigation, and you're like, let me just be safe and go check my computer. And then you go down and you find out that your extraordinarily beautiful 5-year-old and 8-year-old put their information on the site, told them, where they live, what school they went to, gave them the name, gave them the phone number. And I had this stress that these people, I couldn't let my children out of my sight for a minute. Like, if I was late to the bus stop, somebody could be, could grab them. If I was, like, if I didn't, if she was coming out of an after school activity early, like any of these things. And you start getting into this place. So, but I was screaming at the time, whenever I was like, why would you do this? I don't understand. Why would you do this? And she was crying, and she's like, Mommy, you told me to be kind to people. You told me not to be rude. And I was like, oh my God.
I did.
She's 8. I don't care how many times you educate them. That education is a false sense of security for you. It's just a false sense of security. It doesn't actually really prevent them from something. It may or may not. But you can't, the brains just they can't discern at the same level. They don't have the same understanding of the true danger that's out there, nor do you want to show them pictures of like
what it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
They're so naive and innocent to it all. And like, I know I had a situation with my daughter where she went behind my back and added Snapchat and Instagram, and to even me trying to get that account shut down from Instagram was a nightmare. And I just gave up. They're like, well, it's not against the community standards. And so she knew she knew at the age of 8 how to bypass. No, she actually knew my iPhone password and the Apple ID. And so she knew how to go to my email and bypass the parenting side, the parent app where I have to approve it. She bypassed that and then created her own account. And I'm like, well, what email are you using? Well, I have never shown her on her iPad how her messaging, she can only contact like family and friends, and it's only for iPhone users. But I also have it set to where I hid the email. So I never told her email address, but she managed to find it out and set up all the accounts using that email address.
I mean, listen, all the things that put them in danger are also the things that are going to make them incredible leaders one day.
Absolutely.
Right? And so we don't want to like completely squash these can-do attitudes. I can do it. I can do it. And these children are children. Like, that's not a bad, like, literally, when I called the FBI and I was like, do you know what they did? they didn't try and take down the website. They were like, what kind of mother puts her children on those sites? And I was like, whoa. And, because I am a person, some people might have stood up to that and some people might have, but I take accountability and I'm like, oh, I know.
I would have been like, I know, I didn't know. I didn't vet it first.
But I did know. My initial interaction with that told me it was dangerous and told me it was wrong. And I deferred. I punted to the expert. I gave up my own parental rights and I let them tell me what was going to be okay for my children. Do you understand? And that's not okay. And so what's really sad and disgusting is how our parental rights have eroded and what's happening in these school systems to take the children away from their parents. And we can't ignore that. It's not only physically taking them away, but it's this mental grooming as well to get them to side with things that aren't really appropriate and aren't okay. And your parent is just,
Yep.
But and so it's a massive energy of praying. It's these other entities praying. And I posted at one point a picture of a mother like this, and it's got like a judge's handle and a needle and a school book and the comps and the DSS. And I was like, yeah, that's what it feels like. It feels like you're just doing everything you can to stop these other entities from really coming after our children. And I think we need to lean into that. I think that gets at the heart of what's going on. I really do feel that we are in a time where we have a worldwide, this isn't just the US, but a worldwide governmental takeover of its people. And they are coming after our children. It's worldwide humanistic control, and they want to be able to separate parents from their children. And that's why they're getting rid of the son and daughter, and they're, you know what I mean? They're getting rid of mother, father, right? Because the government can be a parent. Government can have parental rights. Yeah.
And that's, so as much as, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, as much as COVID has kind of pushed this way, they've almost in a sense overreached their hand on all of this, where now it's like, wait a minute, you've always been doing this to my kids. You've always been forcing me to vaccinate them or to teach them this way or to and now it's like, wait a minute. And even school boards where it's like, yep, that name sounds good, and you just vote for these people without being aware of what you're actually voting for. And so that's over this last year, that's really been me, where it's like, even my boys will come home and be like, oh, I learned this today. I was like, but is that real? And it could even be on like World War II.
Exactly.
But is that real? Or are you sure that's what? And I don't know one way or another. I learned the same history they learned, but
yes, exactly.
Let's start looking that up. So now my younger son, he'll be on YouTube, and don't worry, I watch. He'll go on and he'll be like, did you know the Titanic might have been sunk by not an iceberg? I was like, that's the thinking I want to have. I was like, that is it, because that's the education we need, that what you hear isn't necessarily true, because look at the sheep we currently have in our society of, they told us I had to stand 6 feet apart. They told us I had to put a mask on. They told us why? You're healthy. You're fine. What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, this is one of the things that I was just talking about too with this, is this attitude of, I don't care if you are committing human rights atrocities because you're innocently and blindly following, or if you're committing human rights atrocities because you actually are benefiting from them and you're one of the people propagating it. All that matters is you're still committing human rights atrocities. The sheep and the people propagating it are both part of that problem, and you're responsible. You're accountable.
Yes.
And you're still committing human rights atrocities. Duke University, where my son just got accepted, is mandating experimentation in order for children to be enrolled in the college. shouldn't say children because it's 18, but this is against the Nuremberg Code. The Nuremberg Code very clearly states that human experimentation cannot be enforced, and it's not legal in any way. And not only is it not legal, it is a massive human rights atrocities, and we will hold you accountable. And we've got an institution, a reputable institution like Duke University, outwardly and egregiously saying we're going to just break any Nuremberg Code law, international health and hygiene laws, and medical experimentation, and we're going to outwardly and legally require it, or you can't come to school here. What are we talking about?
Right.
Like, when are we going to stand up?
And I think the sad
were
part
just saying,
of
like,
that is so many people are just blindly like, okay, like they're just submitting their kids to that and subjecting them to that environment without asking questions or without fighting back. And I know even like our college here, like when the whole Epstein case flew, it's like, okay, I knew about that because it did happen to make it to mainstream media, bits and pieces, as far as like that money. He gave a lot of money to our colleges. And there's just from the sugar daddies and so many red flags that went off, but so many parents did not pay attention to it and still don't pay attention to it.
I mean, my husband is on the board, the ethics board at Duke University. I have submitted to the board in writing that he's a pedophile, that he acknowledges his pedophilia, and at the time agreed to stay away from children. And they don't take him off his board. And then the judges issue an order against me that says that I'm not allowed to contact Duke anymore. It is a system that protects pedophiles. We are living in a societal system that protects pedophiles. And I want to tell you why I think this is important. I think that this takeover that we're having, this humanistic control that we've been groomed to as a society to accept this level of compliance and this level of abuse, we've been groomed for decades. They use pedophilia as one of their major weapons of warfare against us. Why? Because it makes people compliant from a very young age. It makes you live in fear and generate fear and anxiety, right? It gets you used to gaslighting. So all of these things, when you can get a child to be like that when they're a child, that makes for a very pliable adult, okay? So I think that this issue of pedophilia, which people are like, there's too many things that are all coming into play here. And we're like, no, it's all related. This is
coming
all
together.
Yes, it's all, there's a reason that all of these things are coming to the surface at the same time. And it's true. By exposing this awful corruption for so long, then what else is happening is people are waking up to their sovereignty and their power, and they're understanding that they have a different level of strength than maybe they thought. And they're understanding that maybe some of the systems of justice that they thought were there to protect them are there to hurt them, but that they individually as people can stand up and take back their power, right? So we're in a dominoes race. What's going to happen sooner? Are they going to overpower us? Are we going to stand up and claim our sovereignty, right? I know that in the end, we win. I know that we win this war, okay? But it's just a matter of how much pain and kidnapping and abuse and struggles and deaths that we have to go through before we stand up and actually reclaim our humanity, right?
Yep.
So a year ago, 14 months ago, we would have been able to get this all accomplished by just using our voice, right? If when all these lockdowns started happening, people are like, how about no? How about that doesn't make sense? How about we still have to eat and we still need medical care, so therefore we can't stop moving, so therefore you can't ever freeze the universe enough to make this go away in 2 weeks. So
Right.
no, we're not doing that. And if everybody just said that, our voice would have been enough. But now it's not enough. And then maybe your voice and a couple actions. Now it's your voice and a lot of actions, and you need to be loud and you need to be forward about all of this stuff, because they are coming to take our children.
Yep.
And they are doing it very easily, very little possible deniability, and you have almost no rights and no recourses. And when you think about it, a lot of times we're like, well, I'm going to sue them. I'm going to sue them. Wait until, okay, right? That is our mechanism for justice. But what if that very same system of justice was the one that was kidnapping your children, was the one that was poisoning? Well, then what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Where are you then?
Right.
Where are you then? And so that's what I believe I'm manifesting. I believe that I'm taking a case, a very egregious case of judicial immunity up through the ranks of our courts. Now, judicial immunity has been something that has been tried in cases over 25,000 times, okay? There's this tenet of quote unquote justice that says that judges have an emolument of judicial immunity, which means they can pretty much do anything to you and you can't sue them because they need to have immunity in order to do their job. But there's also something that says that when a judge violates your rights under the color of law, that they then shed their jurisdiction, right? So they're no longer a judge. When they completely violate your rights, they shed their jurisdiction and then they're accountable personally for what they're doing because they're not really acting in a judge capacity anymore.
Right.
But the problem is that hasn't been upheld. It's been twisted so that judges, not only do judges have judicial immunity, but now they're saying prosecutors have judicial immunity because they're so intertwined with the judicial process. And I'm like, how about no?
Right.
How about you're showing collusion between the judges and the prosecutorial team, which is supposed to be a clearing entity, and now you're just outwardly extending judicial immunity. And that's what was happening to me. The DA and the cops and the judge would sit in the room, whisper, 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 talk, talk, talk. They'd go out, they'd write, they'd come back out, whisper, 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 talk, talk. I was like, this is ex parte communications and clear collusion and malicious prosecution. And everybody's like, yeah, so what are you going to do about it? And so that's why my case, I filed in the federal lawsuit, and then that judge, who is an awful freaking person, her name's Kathy Seibel. And again, this is a federal judge. So it's one thing, this is the judge, this is Howard T. Code, child trafficker. Nice guy, if you met him, you think he's a nice guy. Remember, they use their nicest to deceive, okay? This is the divorce lawyer. I always say she looks like Family Guy, right? This is the
Looks like the
judge who
Health and Human Services lady or whoever, whatever that
oh
new.
my God, exactly. Nancy Quinkova. I just want you to understand like how deep this is into the system. I brought my case to New York State Supreme Judge Janet DiFiore, who, by the way, used to work with Peter Goodrich, who was my husband's attorney. So all of a sudden, Peter stops talking to me, and Janet writes me things to say, oh no, we see no impropriety with the fact that you've never been given a trial, that you're not allowed access to your file, that your files get deleted, that you're denied access to the court.
And
This
they
is
never, oh, I'm sorry, they never interviewed your kids in court or did any of that stuff. So it's not like they were 3 years old, they're teenagers.
Exactly. Thank you. So on June 5th, on the day that she issued me, Judge Arlene E. Katz, and I have a picture of her, the day that she issued this here is my pedophile husband, Ryan Stryker Weinstein. The day that she issued this court order to have me evicted from my home, remember, my children were with me. My children were living with me. My husband was missing, willfully established his own residence, and was estranged for weeks and undergoing a pedophilia investigation. And the children came to court to say, why are you giving my mother an order of protection? We want to stay with my mother. And my dad, like, this is ridiculous. And I'm like, of course they're going to hear from you. You're 17,
Right.
16, and 13. Of course they're going to hear from you. And the judge refused. She wouldn't even let them in the courtroom. She wouldn't even let them, nothing. I know. That's what I mean. That's how malfeasance is, judicial malfeasance. They're not hiding that they're trafficking children. She's just doing it. I'm trying to find a picture. This is her. This is the one
So
where it all started. You understand he
almost
writes
a
this
year.
one.
You've had it where almost
She submits this. Go ahead.
You've had it so where it's almost been a year and you have no contact with your kids at all, or anyone to even let you know how they're doing or what grooming or anything that they're even like involved in. So mental health wise, like you don't even know any status of your kids.
Well, let me tell you what happened. So, this devil, and I mean devil, I mean disgusting child trafficker. So she gave custody of my children to my husband while he was under a pedophilia investigation, while there was no threat, nothing that my husband writes about me writing him too many text and emails to my husband of 20 years, almost 20 years, who was missing for weeks and undergoing a pedophilia. Like, and if you, I posted the text and emails. They're like, we love you, we miss you, we'll help you, we'll get through this. Are you okay? Are you a threat to yourself or others? I mean, it's bogus. But so she issues a full vacate and stay away order. The cops come to the house, they evict me from the children are crying, the police lie. And this is again where I just want people to know their rights, because I didn't know my rights. The way the police and the cops are working now and DSS is they lie to you. And if you don't know your rights and don't stand up, then they do what they're going to do. But if you stand firm in your rights, then they can't get away with it. So I didn't know that what they were saying was not true. When they said, we're gonna arrest your mom for kidnapping if you go with her. If I was just like, oh, who cares? No, you're not. That's illegal and that's unlawful. And there's no way, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't know that. I was like, is that true? That doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right. And they're like, yeah, it's true. It's definitely true. And you're in such a state of shock. Like, I'm still trying to process that my husband's a pedophile and that he's abused my children and that he's tried to take me against my will and that he paid people to kidnap me. Like, I'm still trying to process all of that. And in addition to all of that, I now have these police lying to me, and I'm just like, and then my son saying, don't worry, mom. Sorry.
Don't apologize.
You're fine.
If he, don't worry, mom, I'm not gonna let him touch us. If he comes near us, I'm gonna punch him. And I was like, oh my God. And my kids were like, we'll lock our doors. But these fucking police, do you know what I mean? Like, the police knew. And they're lying to my children. Sergeant Bassett, Officer Raphael, maggots, maggots, maggots. They lied to my children. They lied to my face. Disgusting. So, and my husband sent all these people to the house who were, I thought, helping me. They were like my friends. And then I realized as soon as I left the house and I had the police body cam, they're going up to the police. Oh, thank God you got rid of her. Jesus, that took so long. These are people that showed up and they're like, it's okay, Lizzie, we're gonna help you. We're not gonna let anything happen to the children. We're gonna fix this. Don't worry, Lizzie. Don't worry, this is crazy. And then as soon as I leave, they're like, yay, like they're like high-fiving each other. Like, thank God we got rid of her. Psychopaths, Laura Warnier, Bridget Dale, Carla Savoni, Eric Castillo, psychopaths. Eric literally said to me, you should go to jail for ever saying somebody was a pedophile. And I was like, stepfather, Eric Castillo.
Wrong
like protecting pedophiles, do you? But this is what I mean. Like, this is the kind of stuff that was coming hard at me all at once. What happened when I first came out about my husband, I feel like every pedophile in the area rose up and they came at me. Mm-hmm. Like, very good friends of mine. Okay, so okay, these people were some of my best friends. This guy works at Goldman Sachs, Stu Woody. This guy works at First Republic National Bank, Dan Warnier. This guy, Dave Beaton. This guy, same thing. This guy also said to me, Matthew Coolin, he said to me like, oh yeah, you should go to jail. You should go to jail for talking about pedophilia. You're not well. Psychopaths. This guy is a chief legal officer at Morgan Stanley, Eric Grossman. And my husband would send him gaslighting emails to help him vet and approve before they would send it to me. He'd be like, hey, E, take a look at this one for me. Yes, sick and sadistic. And this guy, Jonathan Brenner, one of Brian's best friends, who literally same thing. Like they all came out and they supported the pedophile. And it's one thing to say, let's support the children. Let's keep the children safe. Let's figure out what the children, but anybody that's like, get rid of the mother and hey kids, your dad is safe and make sure that you feel good around your dad. And I'm here to normalize this situation for you.
Yep.
That's a person with a vested interest in pedophilia. You understand? That's not somebody who's protecting the kids. And these people, I mean, they were like my best friends. We would go, if there was a 40th birthday and there were 9 couples that we would go away all the time and be together. Every single weekend we're together, our kids together. And I realized, holy shit, I was in a cult. I was in a cult of people who encourage pedophilia for their own personal and private reasons. No, not even practically, but really. But I just want to show you how many judges are involved. There's like over 15 different judges that literally have seen my case, or who have been involved with it, or who just recuse themselves instantly without, this is what I'm saying. It's not just 1 or 2 people, guys. We have this notion that it's like, oh, you got a bad judge. Oh, that one child protective service person is bad. Oh, no, it's a system. It's a system of people who come out and protect children. Now, this woman had my case. I filed what was called a writ of mandamus. So a writ of mandamus is when you order a higher judge, judge in a higher court, to order a different judge to do something, okay? So in my case, I was given an order of protection. Ex parte, which meant one side went in and made false and baseless accusations, and I wasn't given a chance to be heard. And I had my whole livelihood taken away from me, right? No children, no home, no money, no belongings, nothing, no dog, can't get my mail. So I filed what's called a writ of mandamus, which is an Article 78 proceeding. And again, I'm not a lawyer. I had to learn all of this. And that's to order a judge to say, listen, you don't have discretion. It's a law that I am entitled to due process. You don't have discretion not to give me a trial. So I demand that you give me a trial, okay? And I also said, you don't have discretion to evict me from my home. My husband had willfully established his own residence. So if you felt the need to give him an order of protection, give him the order of protection. And he lives where he lives,
Stay
and I live where I live, and you still give me a trial.
Right.
But you don't just, you don't right just to evict me from my home. And also, there's no Article 8 evidence here. Article 8 evidence is a level at which a judge has to meet, the standards at which a claim has to meet in order to issue an order of protection, and it has to show bodily harm. There's no Article 8 evidence here, nor does he mention the children in danger in any way. And as a matter of fact, he goes on to say that the children were safe and that I would never harm the children and that I'm a good and loving mother. But God darn it, he needs the court to force me.
That just sounds crazy
too much.
as like texting him too much. And
I mean, it's back to crazy. And it's not just, I want you to understand, it's not just the judges. It's the DA's office.
the whole
This guy
system,
works at
they don't work
the
together.
Attorney General's office, This guy is an appellate court judge. An appellate court judge. I mean, it's crazy. This woman is egregious now. So this woman is Molly O'Rourke, and she works at the district attorney's office in the children's sex division.
Oh, good.
In sex crimes.
Good.
And she was the one who trafficked my children to my husband. So when I went to her with the evidence of the attempted kidnappings and the fees paid and the list of places that he wanted me to be taken, using my name and hospitals in our area, right? And like everything, the contract, the emails, she said to me, there's nothing illegal here. And I was like, Molly, are you freaking kidding me? So what was awesome about it is I also have this, right? I also have this. So at the time, my husband's writing this with my name in all the places. I have him writing this because I say to him, Brian, are you trying to take me away against my will? And he says, I'm not trying to take you away, Lizzie. I can't do that under the law. And you're not a danger to yourself or your kids. I'm writing this to you, so you'll have it from me in writing, and that should give you comfort. You're a wonderful person and a great mother. And then he goes on to be like, but don't you think you're paranoid? Don't you think you're a little crazy for thinking that I would try and take you against your will? Don't you think you should maybe go get help? And I'm like, no, motherfucker.
No.
I've got your iPad. I've got all the contracts. I've got everything.
Yeah,
What are you doing?
have
You're
it all.
going to ruin your law license. Right. So then Molly O'Rourke, and this guy, the chief of all domestic violence, Fred Green, who I, called and I met with to try and go through all of this with, they said, he sounds like a nice guy. Maybe he's just trying to help you.
He admitted to pedophilia.
Don't you just want to go away for a few days? And I was like, Mr. Green,
No.
my husband's missing and under a pedophilia investigation. And I'm the sole caregiver for my children. And you want me to go away? If I was stressed, I would get a massage. And I'd have them come to the house because I wouldn't want to leave my children. I'd leave for 3 days. And then he's like, and Molly O'Rourke, head of the Children's Sex Crime Division, and child trafficker Fred Green say to me, well, there's nothing unlawful here. And I say, hey, Molly and Fred, let me ask you something. You went to law school, right? And they're like, yeah, we work at the DA's office. And I was like, great. And I'm sure you're really smart because I'm not a lawyer. And I'm sure you're really smart. And I don't know where you went to law school, but my husband went to Yale. And when a Yale man tells you it's illegal, I'm going to listen to him, Mr. Green.
Right.
So now I know that you're not investigating crimes, sex crimes against children, and you're running the department.
That's so
I
sick.
see you. This is sick. And then you know what happened? Fred Green and Molly O'Rourke and David Lauscher all brought charges against me. Against me. They're the ones when I would get picked up by the police for these false and baseless charges. They were like, you're wearing a purple shirt today. You're in the wrong street. You can't be here. And I'm like, yes, I can. It's not a violation. We changed our mind about the violation. It's now going to be, and I'm like, no, you can't just arbitrarily change your mind. This is ridiculous. And they'd be like, too bad. They would cuff me and bring me to the station, right? So when all of that was happening, it was Fred Green and Molly O'Rourke and that office, that's the domestic violence unit, bringing the charges against me. And then Joyce Miller, who was there, and David Lauscher. It's the whole system. So guys, we've got to stand up and protect our kids. We have to oust these people. These people are disgusting parasites. We live in a society where our family courts are not, and our child protective services are child trafficking services. This is not just my story. I just happen to be incredibly well documented about it and incredibly loud. But I promise you, wherever you live, this is happening in your area. And it used to be that you knew maybe somebody like 4 people removed this happened to you. And now most people can be like, oh yeah, that happened to my cousin. Or, it's like one person removed. Mm-hmm. You understand? So we need to stand up and take a strong position as parents against this type of judicial corruption that takes control of our children. It came out in 2012. Now, 2012 was 9 years ago. The U.S. Department of Justice did a report called the Saunders Report that said in over 70% of the time, and this is 2012, it's gotten worse since then, in over 70% of the time, a judge will knowingly give the children to the abuser. Why? Because a non-abusive parent will fight back. That will drum up business for the court. It gives business for the judge. It gives business for the law clerks. It gives business for child protective services, for the court officers that stand at the door when you're coming in, for the secretaries. I mean, it's disgusting. But this is what I want people to understand. They came out in 2012 and they told us that they were doing it. The US Department of Justice told us in 2012, yeah, we're doing it. And it's not even kind of sort of.
Yeah.
We're doing it in the majority of the time. And we have done nothing.
So there was, during COVID, there was a group of women who, from Arizona, they worked for the state and they wore professional kidnapper shirts. So they worked for CPS, they wore the professional kidnapper shirts. They were actually fired and people just laughed at it like, oh, why would they do that? And it's like, that we're asking the wrong questions. And that's one thing is parents, definitely do your research and ask if you need somewhere to look or do your research. Feel free to message us and ask those questions. And as a mom and other moms who are watching, one question that I know that we, me and Becky kind of talked about was, how did you sit down and have that conversation with your children? And what were some of the red flags that you now looking back, you're like, wow, how did I not see that? Or what do I wish I would have did different?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. And there were a million red flags. I think the very first thing, like I said in the beginning, to getting back to your intuition, to uncover, get rid of all of your indoctrinated thoughts, get rid of your, I'm forgetting the word off the top of my head. There's a word for a certain type of belief that we have, which means that it's even worse than indoctrinated thought. We just kind of go straight there. But the idea is, there were so many signs. It was out in the open that my husband was a pedophile. Like, not only did he have a lifelong experience with it, but he kept a loving relationship with his abuser. He saved his abuser's letters. His abuser was in his 40s. My husband was in his teens. He used to take my husband away with other troubled boys. He was a known alcoholic, Ron Barry, and he would take my husband away with other troubled boys and spend weekends with him, getting him drunk and climbing in bed with him. Okay. And they were called Barry's boys. It was out in the open. Everybody knew about it, but you just kind of like shoved it off. Do you know what I mean? And Ryan's sister, Michelle Locke, she got sexually molested, right? She had her art teacher would go up in her room and strip me. Their parents would be like, oh, it's fine. Oh, it's fine. Now, what type of parent would just be so dismissive about it? Well, I learned the parent who condones it. But I never thought of it that way. I just thought, oh, Alice and Richard, they're just absent-minded, disgusting parents that really don't pay attention to their children. No, people aren't stupid. They are manipulative. Yeah. They are manipulative. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they were counting on the idea that you thought that they were like, oh, just absent-minded parents, when they're really know exactly what they were doing. They're having their children around other pedophiles because they condone the behavior, and they're trying to get their children used to the behavior. It's sick and sadistic and twisted, right? But it doesn't mean that they are, it doesn't mean that they're not, but you have to consider it. And I never considered all these things. So my husband would groom our children. He would walk around in his boxers with his penis hanging out. And I'd be like, what are you doing? That's not appropriate. And he'd be like, oh, I forgot you told me, right? I shouldn't have to tell a Yale man that he can't have his penis hanging around the kids. Right. But like in your mind, you don't think that the person that you're having sex with is getting sexual gratification from children. You don't go there, right? So you make something that makes sense. So in my mind, the story that I created was that, oh, my husband just has Stockholm syndrome. So he doesn't know that these behaviors are wrong. He did have Stockholm syndrome, but he knew the behaviors were wrong, but he engaged with them. Do you understand? And there were so many warning signs with the kids, and the warning signs aren't what we think. Just like we were talking about with the kids, like you would say, oh, your child will tell you or
Right.
you'll know, like you'll be able to figure it out. No, you won't. You could have put a gun to my head and said, is there any chance that your daughter would even tell people her name? And I'd be like, absolutely zero chance.
Right.
Zero. I would have said zero. I would be dead to this day, right? So the signs aren't what we expect. It's not that the child coming to tell us. It's not. It is literally, you have to, they're bodily signs. When you start seeing that the children get heavy allergies, that's a sign of internal inflammation in the body. The body gets inflamed, just like COVID is a stacking of different inflammations, okay? When your body is under stress and fear generates cortisol in your brain, and that cortisol then creates inflammation in your body. When children start getting heavy allergies, you have to consider that they're being abused. When children start, all of a sudden, this is an interesting one, walking on their toes. Because all of a sudden, because what happens is a lot of times it'll be from the rear, and they tighten like this. And then all of a sudden, if a normal child suddenly starts walking on their toes, I know. It's things like being angry at the protective parent when they start fighting, because that's what their brains have to do. Their brains go into a place where Stockholm syndrome and identification with the abuser is one of our most well-known psychiatric or psychological symptoms that we understand. And it's basically that the abuse is so severe that they completely disassociate from it. And then they instead turn that person into a hero, right? So they will never say anything bad about that person, because if they do, then that opens the can of worms to all the pain that they had with that person, okay? So what they do instead is they have to detach from the protective parent, because a protective parent, if they value that protective parent, if they thought that that protective parent was amazing, what does it mean that that amazing person didn't help them? It must mean something bad about them. Yep. So the ego and the soul, what it does, I don't know if it's a soul, but what it does is you then devalue the protective parent. You put them down, you dismiss them, you start fighting with them, you get really agitated with them. And then you have this like, but it's a codependency with your abuser, right? It's a weird type of like defend at all costs. You know, like even when Brian would do something really stupid, I couldn't get my older son. My older son was always like against me like this. And it would make me nuts. I was like, buddy, what is going on?
What is up?
And then the other thing is my son started acting like a victim out of nowhere, right? He went from like happy, easy, blah, 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 to nobody likes me. I don't want to go to school, like all this stuff, right? And for me, I was like, no. We don't play that way. You're not a victim. Look at how great your life is. Well, asshole mother, consider. And he was acting like a victim because he was being victimized. But I thought I was being like the tough love, like, look at how great you are. Don't have a pity party, right? Like that's what I took. Like, don't feel sorry for yourself. Not knowing that he did a lot to feel sorry for about his life. Anyway,
I wish we could give you a hug through our screens.
I know, right? I wish I was in New York and not Arizona.
Right?
Because
oh God, I mean, honestly, like sometimes the inhumanity of it all just like sneaks up on me. And I say this all the time on my pages, but it's really important when we have these emotions that we feel these emotions and that we lean into them. Yeah. And then we transmute it into something stronger, because energy can't be created or destroyed, right? It can only be changed. So we have to take this pain and turn that into something beautiful. We have to take this fear and turn that into strength. but you don't get there by bypassing it. You really have to sit with it and feel it.
Yeah.
Hopefully not when you're on the live stream podcast.
Yeah, but
we're all learning together though, and just know that you are transmuting that pain and you are helping us as a mother and so many other parents around the world, and you stood in your power and used your voice and have so much strength to be a powerful voice for the voiceless. So
Thank you.
as tough as it is right now, know that you're not alone, and we are here to support you. Even if you're having those bad days, know
Thank
that
you.
reach out to us, even if you need
Yeah.
a prayer, because I know that I won't even say fair share. I didn't mean to say that. I will say you've gotten your share of the online trolls and
Let's be clear. I really don't. There's only like 3 or 4 people. It's my husband. It's his cousin Pam. It's Laura Warnier. It's this guy Paul that was friends with my husband. Like they're really all the same people. Like, so when people are like, oh my God, all these people are coming out, and I'm like, no, they're always like 0, 0, 0. But there's one other important thing that I wanted to say about a symbol, something that you asked for about things that what I missed. Okay.
Yeah.
I want you to do this. We are taught that when we think critically about things, that's paranoia, or that's a conspiracy theorist, or that's crazy, or that. Stop. That's so stupid. And I think as a society, we're waking up to the stupidity of all that. We understand that. But you have to ask yourself, literally ask yourself, could I be lying to myself about something? Could I have had an experience? What would that look like? How would I know if I had an experience and I got indoctrinated thought and I'm just bifurcated down a path? So read about it, learn about it. What happened for me is I started reading about it, and it'll speak to you. Things will come to you. You'll hear what you need to hear. And all of a sudden I was like, wait, my kids are like that. Wait. So
like deja vu.
Yeah, educate yourself about it, number 1. Number 2, understand that there are certain things, like I said, look for the grooming behaviors. We're so willing to excuse the behaviors of parents and subject children to, because we don't want to get involved. We don't want to be impolite. We don't want to falsely accuse. There's no false accusation. I'm sorry, I don't like the way that you were holding my child. That's not a false accusation. I didn't accuse you of sexually molested them. I specifically used the words of what you were doing was wrong. But when somebody gets crazy and they jump back at you, right? How could you think that? Why would you remember? It's normal for us to step back and apologize and instead lean into that person. Know that those people that really go crazy, when you stand up for your rights and for your children's rights, when they come at you, those are the people you need to protect your children from. And you will be shocked at how those are normal people who you have trusted for decades in your life, okay? The other thing that one of my domestic violence therapists and I were talking about this. When I first asked my children about it, when we were, they would answer like this. They get almost hypnotic when they answer you. Their eyes get big and they're like, no. It literally is. It is a mental manipulation. Their abuser. It is part of the game, okay? To mentally twist them. And it's not all with violence. My father wasn't violent with me. My father was like, this is daddy love.
And how would you tell different?
Don't tell people, because they're going to be jealous of you. And I don't want anybody to be jealous of you. And literally, it was one of these weird things that you carried around as a woman. Like it all of a sudden I was like, oh, that's why I had that stupid, like, oh, that girl's just jealous. Because my father, like, it's sick and crazy. But it wasn't a violent situation. Do you know what I mean? So it's not what you expect. Understand, I had this preconceived notion that pedophiles didn't want their children around other people, that pedophiles would want that child for themselves, right? It's the opposite. I now understand that pedophiles, just like a drug addict knows who the other people are in a party that do drugs, where
Yep.
like a normal healthy person might not know all the signs, a pedophile knows there's like an underground understanding of who's who and what's what. And they bring the children around those people more, because then the children get used to it. Then the children don't know any better. Then that helps to protect them. It protects the pedophile, not the child. It devalues the child constantly. So the child doesn't feel strong enough to stand up against their abuser, because everybody seems like an abuser, or that just seems like a normal thing, right? Like there was a story about a girl talking about child trafficking. And you know, I had posted something that was like a little girl chained to downstairs, and holding on to a pole, and there was like a shadowy figure in the doorway. And she said, listen, I just want to tell you something. That's the image that we have of child trafficking, right? We're looking for the people going through the trucks underneath the thing. It's happening. It's parental. My father trafficked me from the time, not me, I'm saying this person's talking, from the time that I was 3. And she's like, and here's what it looked like for me. My mom worked during the days, so my dad would take us to an amusement park. And my mom was like, don't I have the nicest husband in the world? Like, he's so involved with the kids. My dad would bring 3-year-old me, this is this woman talking, into the men's room and leave me in a stall and walk out. And then another man would come in and take my hand and walk out. And they were like, I didn't know any better. I'm 3. Like that. And that went on for her whole life. Another woman came on and said, yeah. So my dad used to rape me until I was 14. Then at 14, like I was too old for him. So he would have his friends come over. When I was sleeping, they would come upstairs and rape me. Do you understand? It's a sick and twisted. We have to understand how ingrained this is into our society if we have any hope of eradicating it. Because if we still stick with our preconceived notions and try and put it in a box in order for us to feel safe, instead of really ripping the cover off of this and realizing that almost all of us have had some experience with this that we are hiding. And until we are able to peel back our own layers and get to our own truths, will we then be able to get rid of all of the societal norms by which we protect this practice?
Right. Because it's just generational. Once it happens, you don't know that that's why you are this way, or you don't remember for 20 years that you're this way. And that's what's just your thing. And it's okay because it's just my thing. And now we've done it. Now we've done it to the next generation. And instead of stopping it and saying, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore, and I'm going to do the tough work to stop it this time.
Exactly.
We are not going to stop it generationally. And you're absolutely right. And if it's not generational, then they throw porn out there for you. Oh, and this thing wasn't good enough, and now we got to go deeper, and we've got to go harder. It's got to be younger, whatever. And so I think you're exactly right. And you're absolutely onto something, that this is at its core what is causing all the stuff. And we have so many, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Whether it's in sales or in law or in whatever, like all of these big CEOs, they're doing the same thing. Big Pharma's doing the same thing. And we've got to stand up, but we've also got to take the onus to turn back in. And exactly what you're talking about, saying, all right, how do I heal myself? How do I become the light? How do I become the platform for someone like you to come on and do this? And how do you really know how do you become a truth teller? How do you fix yourself so that you can be? And I think so many people, especially in this last year, have had to look inward. We didn't have anything else to block us or to blind us anymore. And so a lot of people are like, all right, I got to figure myself out. And that's where the light is starting to come out.
Exactly.
And we're going to get there.
When you think of it like a hypnotism, okay, and it literally is a hypnotism. You go into a different part of your brain and you snap into it. So you don't have a recollection, an awakening, an awareness the way that you think you would. And you have to acknowledge that as a truth. And when you acknowledge that as a truth, then you can start saying, okay, well, if that's happening, I want to figure it out and I want to break through. And then that's when you can understand. Then you break through all your false preconceived notions about what it would look like when you saw it with your children, and who would come forward and who the people would be to help you. And you understand it is so deeply ingrained in our society, and that they've been grooming us for this for decades, and that we are now at a point where we are rising up, we are taking a different awareness of it, and it's just a matter of how quickly we can awaken to our own sovereignty.
Right?
But again, I'm tired of trying to wake people up, and I'm just saying, you're responsible. You want to be asleep? You're responsible. You want to propagate it? You're responsible. I don't care. I don't have the time to parcel out your why anymore.
Right.
I'm just going with the what. I don't know why you were following along with these bullshit, bogus regulations that you're claiming are laws that aren't laws,
Right.
when you have the exact same information that I do. I don't know why you're doing it. I don't care. All I know is that all of those things are massive human rights violations.
Yep.
And you're accountable. If you're propagating human rights violations, you're accountable. That's the end game. I'm not standing up for it. I'm not like trying to hold anybody's hand anymore. Like, you're a grown ass adult. Figure it out.
Well, and everything you want is on your phone. Just look for it.
Well, and the other thing,
well, in the good and the bad, right?
True.
yeah,
Touche. Touche.
Yeah. Depends how you use all the technology as well.
Yes.
And I know for me, as far as even with the programming of, as me and Becky have talked to our kids even more, or even become more awakened and open conversations with our kids, I know that there's programs that my daughter watched before and she wouldn't have caught anything, but now that she'll flip through or see Disney with different family members or friends, she'll pick up and she'll pause it or screen record on her iPod, and she'll be like, oh my gosh, Mom, look at this. And there was a show where they had a kid where he was a superhero, and he was bringing a baby out of the sewer, and there was a mom with the cop, and she had cheese in her hand. And so just the code talk and the subliminal messages in the kids shows, the indoctrination starts so young. And so before she wouldn't notice it, but now she'll go back or see specific things, and she can pick up on the music and pick up on the shows. And so her eyes are wide open as well. So I think that's another thing too, is for me, sometimes she'll tell certain people, well, no, that's not what happened. Or she'll kind of give her knowledge and, well, are you sure that's what happened? Or are you sure that's true? And so she's learned to use her voice as well. But I think another thing is too, what's normal in my house isn't the same as your house or your family member's house. And so that is another thing too, is pedophilia and the programming has been indoctrinated and normalized at such a young age. And it's just taken,
you know what, somebody
another level.
Yeah, somebody brought it to me the other day, and I was like, oh my God, I never thought of that. She's like, Curious George has no mother, is groomed to go with the man in the yellow hat, and all this. They're like, it's pedophilia, but instead of a child, they use a monkey, and then it makes it more socially acceptable. Yep. Oh, let's get on this airplane. No, it's a special adventure. Come with me. And we're all taught like, yay, man in the yellow hat. Yay. With a motherless home, right? And I just want to say this for all the fathers out there. My story is not a mother story. It is not a father story. I'm working right now with 3 dads that have had the exact same thing happen to them. They have been abused by the courts. They've had their children taken away. They've been put in jail when they lost their job and they couldn't pay child support for a child that the court was refusing to let them see for years. I mean, it's this control by our judiciary is crazy. So here are some definite things that people can get involved in right now. Number one, in my Instagram, and maybe you guys can put a link up about
Yes,
this.
yes, we will.
Yeah, we will.
I have a petition regarding my case because I'm in federal courts right now for the false imprisonment. That judge, Kathy Seibel, is trying to declare me incompetent. Not because of a hearing, not because she's ever met me, not because she's ever seen me. She hasn't even allowed me to serve the other parties the case yet. She's just trying to do it because she feels like she can. She basically said, when I wrote to her and said, I want access to the court to be heard because I'm being subjected to cruel and unusual punishment and retaliation for filing that lawsuit, she declined and would not let me come to the court. And then after I got released from the hospital, false kidnapping, she then said, oh, Mrs. Weinstein, you know, when you raised the issue of being falsely imprisoned at that place, you raised your issue of incompetency. So I'm going to make a determination of incompetency or competency over you. So why don't you send me the name of a guardian that you might like? And I was like, Kathy Seibel, that logic would be as if I came to you because my car was stolen and you told me that I raised the issue of my car ownership. What the hell are you talking about? Like the logical fallacy, but this is a federal judge. This isn't like some hokey tokey guy this is a federal judge doing this to me. I want to get a picture of her and show you who she is. It's insane. Like what are we talking about here? You know what I'm saying? And so one of the big issues, this is her. One of the big issues that we have to understand is that our judges are indoctrinated into helping abusers and pedophiles. Our judges are. They are pushing it through the court. Now, why do I say pedophiles? In every single motion that I filed with the federal court, have filed evidence of my husband's pedophilia. Why? Because it shows clear and convincing motive for why he would be colluding with so many people and putting so much on the line, right? Seibel. So I have submitted evidence to her 6 times, 4 times, 5, whatever it might be. In every order that she's issued, ignores it, doesn't once mention it. Like what she should say is petitioner alleges, husband's pedophilia is the causal for motive for his, infractions to the court, whatever, I don't know, for his collusion with judges and law enforcement agencies to try and discredit her. But to ignore it, to just not say anything, to completely leave it off, and then say, oh, I'm going to make a judgment on your competency. Who the hell are you? My competency is not in question. And idiot, Kathy Seibel, you're literally accusing me of being incompetent at the same time that I learned how to process a motion through a federal court and you approved said motions. So
I was going to say the same thing. I was going to be like, I just filled out your crazy paperwork and you're calling me incompetent? No.
But I'm talking about, like, I would submit a motion and she would approve it and then say, and then I'd submit a motion for her recusal and she'd be like, you're too intelligent to suggest such a thing. I'm only questioning your competency. Don't get nervous. And I'm like, which am I? Am I incompetent or am I intelligent? You sound like an idiot.
Right.
But these are the people who give them the power and we pay for them. We pay for them. So we have to understand that if somebody was coming to take control of our humanity, and if these people were using COVID opportunistically, and if they were trying to relax laws, which then allowed the government to be seen as a parent of your child and take control of your child, they would have to do it through the judiciary. So that is why it's so important that our judiciary is accountable for their actions. Because if we maintain this emolument of judicial immunity, we are living under judicial tyranny. So we've got to, there's the Justice Sotomayor and Clarence Thomas are opposite ends of the spectrum of the Supreme Court bench. And there's a very clear argument to be made. The Supreme Court itself is well aware of all of the judicial corruption and is encouraging it and has been fostering it for years. And that Edwards is actually one of the ringleaders of it, okay? But what I think I'm manifesting right now, what I think is happening is that I am taking a clear and convincing case of egregious judicial malfeasance up through our courts in a very public way. And we are going to find out. Will they stand up for our Constitution and for our rights? Or will they stand up for judicial tyranny? And if they stand up for judicial tyranny, parents,
Better be ready to stand.
we need to stand up for our children.
Oh.
Yeah.
This has been absolutely wonderful, and I hate to have to cut it.
No, this is great. I really, really appreciate your time. You guys have been amazing.
Thank you so much. And I am thrilled that we were able to have this conversation, because I think you're absolutely right. The idea that this could happen and it will cut you off at your knees, and then you don't know. And so just you hear Lizzie's story. She knows many other stories. Please follow her on Instagram. She shares all her stuff. And
sign my petition.
Please, yes, sign the petition.
Sign and share the petition and educate other parents about what's going on. They are coming after our babies. And it's not just my story. I wish I was exaggerating. I pray to God, I wish I was exaggerating. I'm not. Yep. And it's not even a US story. It's happening all throughout the world.
Right.
It's not even just to other parents. They're taking children away and putting children in foster care, which for simple things like, oh, you were homeschooling your child. And we don't like the